My name is Sarah, and I've been supporting my husband selflessly since before we got married. But then my husband Daniel had a complete attitude shift when he changed jobs. He started disrespecting me, and, to top it all off, while I was back at my parents' place for the birth of our child, he had the audacity to bring his affair partner home. I returned home quietly and decided to take action. Can I really teach my cheating husband a lesson? My husband is cheating on me and doesn't notice me when I return home quietly from maternity leave at my parents' house. Will you listen to the story of how I was cheated on during my maternity leave? Cheating while his wife is going through the challenges of childbirth? What a despicable husband. Please, tell me more. I'm 31 years old and my husband is 33, 2 years older than me. We started dating because I supported him as a colleague in sales at our previous workplace. He's good at sales pitches, but struggles with paperwork and computers. Being the supportive person I am, I made various arrangements to make his work easier.
Thanks to you, Sarah, my sales performance has been steadily improving. Thank you, Sarah. I wish I could make you happy too.
From there, our relationship began. We saw each other every weekday at work and spent weekends on dates. The days with my gentle and calm husband were so enjoyable. Then, around a year and a half into our relationship, my husband and I decided to get married. My husband suggested changing jobs when we got married.
Although the workload will be more demanding than my current job, I want to challenge myself in a nationwide company to test my abilities. It might be tough for you, Sarah. In return, I'll earn steadily and protect you, Sarah.
I understand. You only live once. Let's give it a shot. I'll do what I can do. As a result of getting married and my husband's job change, I became a full-time housewife and started supporting my husband. He wasn't the most skilled at handling things, so he had quite a hard time at his new job at first. Thanks for your hard work every day. I've prepared you lunch for today.
Thank you, Sarah. I'll eat this and do my best.
I printed out the materials you were preparing.
Sarah, can you practice the presentation with me?
Sure. Let's do our best. To support my husband's efforts, I did everything I could. Thanks to that, his sales performance gradually improved. Around that time, my husband's company held a family barbecue event. The company has a family-oriented culture, and the handling of such events is highly regarded. Understanding this, I naturally participated. I conducted myself politely to improve impressions of my husband. My proactive attitude even made my husband's boss smile.
Having a caring wife like yours waiting is a blessing.
And then suddenly entering this conversation was my husband's colleague, Morgan. Really? If I had a wife like this, I wouldn't be able to see any other women. Did she really need to use the word other women and put it in the conversation? Even though I thought so, I responded with a smile. I had occasionally heard stories about my husband's colleague, Morgan. Morgan is 28 years old. She is quite capable at work, but she has a strong personality and a prickly tongue, which makes her prone to conflict. As soon as my husband's boss left the table, I personally came to experience the characteristics of Morgan that I had heard from my husband. Sarah, you're seen as a good wife, but you're not actually working, right? Isn't it boring every day? And don't you feel like you're not needed in society? With a slight smile, Morgan subtly asserted her dominance. Her strong comments from our first meeting caught me off guard for a moment. But as an adult, I had to respond calmly. That's not true. Supporting my husband's goals is also an important role for me. When I responded firmly like that, Morgan seemed frustrated in her reply. I see. Well, that's good for you. With just those words, she left. Even in large companies, departmental supervisors and colleagues are limited. In a workplace where there are women with such strong personalities, I thought my husband must have had a hard time. Just around the time of that barbecue, my husband's sales performance began to sharply rise. Congratulations, that's amazing. You're in the top 5 for performance.
I might even win MVP by the end of the year.
Good news continued, and it was around that time that I found out I was pregnant. Looking back now, I feel like that was the peak of happiness. From there, gradually, dark clouds began to gather. As my husband's sales performance improved, his ego grew bigger and bigger, and I, suffering from severe early pregnancy symptoms, couldn't manage to support my husband as before.
Hey, where's today's lunch?
Sorry, I'm really struggling with morning sickness. Cooking is tough.
What? If it were work, you wouldn't take a break over something like this. You're lucky, aren't you? As soon as you got pregnant, you can make excuses and abandon your duties.
Certainly, I couldn't keep up with housework as usual, but I didn't think it warranted such harsh words. Daniel's remarks weren't meant for a wife during pregnancy. Day by day, my husband's attitude became more arrogant, and the words directed at me became increasingly harsh.
I'm glad I started earning more money. If I was still as poor as you, I wouldn't be able to survive.
What's that supposed to mean? Why are you saying such horrible things? You've changed.
It's the truth, isn't it? I'm the one who's providing for you. I'm the superior one here.
Your attitude is really starting to get on my nerves.
What's with that face? If you can't even do basic housework, at least try to make me feel better with your attitude.
Don't say anything else nasty. It's bad for the baby. A barrage of remarks from my husband that I never thought possible before. His drastic change is unbelievable. All I hear are remarks that pierce my heart. It was really tough. Moreover, since then, my husband's words and actions have only become more severe. He continued to stay out late due to work and started leaving suddenly for business trips. After that, my early pregnancy symptoms began to ease. There are indeed many issues with my husband's words and actions, but first, I tried to improve our relationship from my side. I made lunches, spoke kindly, and tried to treat him as I always had, unchanged. Despite these efforts, my considerations seemed in vain as my husband continued with his disrespectful attitude.
What? Lunch? Sure, I like to eat lunch and take a break. I'm earning enough now, you know. I don't need you to make me a cheap lunch. I can eat steak for lunch now. I feel like we're living in different worlds now. Oh, and don't waste money. You're just a housewife. I'm a top salesman. We're on different levels.
What's gotten into you? You weren't the kind of person to say that. What happened?
I'm different from you, who always stays the same. I'm always improving.
Before long, even his face is different from my old husband. Despairing at his attitude, I decided to go back to my parents' house to give birth. I was relieved to be away from my husband, who had become short-tempered. Honestly, I felt relieved after returning to my parents' home. Soon after that, I safely gave birth to a baby girl. After things settled down and I returned home from the maternity leave, an incident occurred. When I unlocked the door and entered the house, there were women's shoes I didn't recognize at the entrance. I held my breath as I entered, and from the bedroom, I could hear my husband laughing.
Life without any interference is the best.
She always has such a gloomy face, like she's suffocating.
Yeah, it's annoying, seriously.
He hasn't noticed at all that I've returned from my hometown. Through the door, the conversation between my husband and his affair partner, Morgan, is clearly audible. Despite being a stay-at-home wife, she can't even do housework properly, and her attitude is terrible. Pregnancy isn't a disease, so stop acting so spoiled.
That's right. You taught me that, Morgan. I thought I'd try to re-educate her properly, but she doesn't listen at all. I'd rather marry you than some ugly girl like her.
I wish we could get married soon. It would be nice to clearly break up. They start flirting right then and there, my husband and his affair partner. Both my husband bringing her home and his affair partner Morgan being so bold are beyond belief. Taking advantage of not being noticed, I quietly left home and returned to my parents' house. That's a decisive scene of infidelity. Wow, your husband was cheating with that colleague, Morgan. You didn't confront them on the spot. Was it better to leave quietly? My husband's foolish behavior would have shocked the old me, but at that moment I felt completely different. My husband showed me decisive evidence of his infidelity, and deep down I felt like laughing. Of course, that conversation was recorded. In fact, I knew in advance that my husband would bring his affair partner home that day. Returning to my parents' house for childbirth allowed me to physically distance myself from my husband and regain my composure. When I talked to my parents about my husband's recent behavior, they were more understanding than I was.
Sarah, you've been supporting him since his previous job. He's really ungrateful. Remember? That boy couldn't even set up his smartphone or tablet properly, so you did it all for him.
Moreover, that tablet, he quickly grew tired of it and stopped using it. Come to think of it, that tablet was here. It might be useful during my hospitalization, so maybe I should revive it. During our move after marriage, I had kept the old tablet that my husband grew tired of and stored it at my parents' house. It had been left unused for a while, but when I tried charging it, it started up as usual. That tablet still has various settings from when my husband tried to use it instead of his smartphone. And then I tapped the WhatsApp button, and it was still synced with my husband's current WhatsApp. Come to think of it, I set up WhatsApp for him too. I fondly remembered the good times. The first thing I saw was Morgan's name at the top of the chats with a familiar icon. The latest chat history said, "Today was fun too. Let's meet again." The moment I saw that, I understood everything. My husband was cheating with Morgan. With trembling hands, I cautiously scrolled back through the chat history. There was a bunch of sweet talk between my husband and Morgan and lots of abusive remarks from Morgan about me. Even though she can't earn money, she's just a sulky wife. How pitiful. I'll comfort you plenty. Making homemade lunch is so old-fashioned and poor-looking nowadays. Next time, I'll tell you about a delicious lunch spot. Those remarks were exactly the kind of things my husband, who had completely changed, often said. I realized Morgan was the source of his transformation. Wow, your husband seems easily influenced. The insults towards you were exactly Morgan's words. He was full of confidence, but it was all just parroting what his mistress fed him. I've completely given up on my embarrassingly shameful husband. I have a child on the way. I must protect the child, no matter what. For that reason, I have to handle this firmly. With that in mind, I resolved to proceed steadily with the preparations for childbirth, while simultaneously considering ways to punish my husband. First, I did not tell my husband that the child had been born. It was to ensure that he wouldn't return home just yet. The conversations between my husband and Morgan on WhatsApp were all visible from the tablet. On the day when my foolish husband foolishly promised to bring Morgan home, without contacting my husband, I returned home. I intended to confront and punish him right then and there. Because the real conversation I overheard between them was too terrible. I realized I couldn't let it go like that. Even though the due date had passed significantly, I insisted to my husband that the baby had not been born yet. At first, my husband, who had been gleefully enjoying his extended affair period, began to show signs of panic. It's been quite a while since the due date passed, but the baby still hasn't been born. Looks like she won't be coming home yet.
Is that so? Is everything really okay?
I don't know. Even the doctor says this isn't common. It might be due to strong stress during pregnancy. Upon hearing those words, even my usually composed husband was at a loss for words. It seems he cares more for the child, even if he treats me harshly. But it's too late for regrets now. After thoroughly tormenting my husband, I contacted his boss and discussed his affair. Actually, my husband and Morgan from the company are having an affair. I'm sorry for bringing this up so suddenly. There's no one else I can talk to about this.
I can't believe it. They're both excellent employees, you know.
I couldn't believe it either. Can you take a look at this? I showed screenshots from WhatsApp on the tablet and recordings of that conversation from the day I got back home. My husband and his colleague Morgan are having an affair at work. This behavior also disrupts the company's operations. The righteous boss was almost overcome by the raw audio that was difficult to listen to.
That's awful. How could they do such a thing? Sarah, please stay strong. We'll discuss this internally right away and decide on the appropriate actions. I'm willing to assist in any way possible.
Afterward, following internal deliberations, severe disciplinary action was taken for severely disrupting company discipline. Neither Morgan nor Daniel knew I was the one who reported them. I calmly called my husband to share the news of our baby's birth. Our baby girl has finally been born. She's absolutely adorable.
Congratulations, Sarah. You really did your best. I've got to tell you something. Are you going to make it home?
I've only just given birth. I can't leave. What's wrong?
I'm really sorry. My affair with a colleague was exposed and I've been suspended from work. I'm truly sorry. Please ask the company to go easy on me. This is how it is.
What? How could you do something so terrible? We can't discuss this over the phone. If you're on suspension, you won't be going to work, right? Come over here and talk to me face to face. Then, immediately after, he came with his parents to my family's house to apologize.
Sarah, please, forgive me. I've done something unforgivable. This time my son has caused a lot of trouble, and I'm truly sorry.
Daniel didn't hesitate to express his deep remorse, and even his embarrassed father-in-law lowered his head in apology.
I miss you so much, and it was just a whim. This is how it is.
My son is also reflecting on this. Please, forgive him.
No matter how much of a whim it was, it's quite something to have an affair with a colleague while your wife is away giving birth. That's right. It's a completely shameful act. I'm sorry. I'm truly remorseful. Sarah, please ask the company for mercy on my behalf.
So what you're really trying to say is that you're only concerned about saving your own skin? Are you really sorry?
Of course I am. I feel terrible. The only one I truly love is you, Sarah. I'll cherish you from now on, so please forgive me.
The way my husband was begging me with tears in his eyes was worthy of a Best Actor award. If I hadn't known any better, I might have been fooled. But my husband, who is clueless about technology, has no idea that I can see his WhatsApp messages with Morgan clear as day. The conversation between my husband and Morgan before they came to my parents' house to apologize was full of words that I can't even bear to repeat.
I'm going to put on a tearful act for my ugly wife now.
You really have to do your best. I can't believe I'm getting this kind of punishment. Don't worry, she's a nice person, so if you cry and beg her, she'll definitely forgive you. Knowing all this, I told my husband coldly. I remember everything from your attitude towards me during pregnancy until my return home after childbirth. You've said so many hurtful things to me, haven't you? Do you understand what you've done? As my husband and our daughter's father, you've completely failed. I will never forgive you, and you have no right to see our daughter. If you understand, why don't you go home and reflect on your actions?
What do you mean? That's not how you should talk to me.
That's right. My child is apologizing so sincerely. Besides, I've heard that you've been treating him poorly too.
My son has a future too. What will you do if you ruin it all for him over one mistake?
I don't know what he has been spouting, but I have had to endure a lot of verbal abuse. In fact, I've been trying to repair our relationship, but it's him who has refused to make any effort to meet me halfway. And that awful language seems to have been influenced by the woman with whom he had an affair.
Stop harping on the past. Do you not care what happens to my life? How heartless can you be? Enough already. As Sarah said, there's no room for sympathy for you.
My calm explanations and the indignant attitude of my parents gradually weakened my in-laws.
Didn't Sarah treat you coldly?
What exactly is going on here?
Are you still trying to make excuses and blame Sarah? You're too selfish. It's unbelievable. Please just go home. Anyway, we're going home now.
I'm sorry. With awkwardness, my in-laws and husband lowered their heads several times and they left. It seemed like my husband was trying to get his parents on his side, but he couldn't possibly hide what he had done. The backs of my husband's family as they left were slumped, and I could hear my husband being scolded by his parents. In the end, after this discussion, my husband lost the favor of his parents and lost anyone who would support him. He tried to cover up with Morgan with a fake WhatsApp message saying, I managed to fix it somehow. After that, my husband called me several times asking for forgiveness. Knowing everything, I made a proposal to my husband. Are you really sorry? I don't intend to continue with you anymore. I want you to pay compensation and child support and get a divorce.
Once we divorce, you'll plead with the company to reduce my penalty, won't you?
You've been calling me like this every day, haven't you? So I'll tell them exactly about your current attitude. And also, I still can't forgive Morgan. I will also claim compensation from her. Although my husband seemed dissatisfied, he reluctantly agreed, perhaps realizing there was no other choice. It seemed like my husband desperately wanted to get back on the career track, so he quickly proceeded with the divorce proceedings. I secured legal commitments for compensation and child support payments and ensured a written agreement for Morgan's payments. That cheating couple, who were so full of themselves, can't oppose anything now. Once everything was settled, I fulfilled my promise to my husband. I had made a promise to my husband. I will convey your current attitude as it is. As promised, I consulted with my supervisor about the chat history where, despite my efforts to be respectful, abusive language continued, and also about my husband's remarks at home. Of course, I also presented all the logs where Morgan and him were engaged in mutual disparagement behind the scenes of his apology calls. Furthermore, upon further investigation of his conversations, I uncovered conclusive evidence. It turns out my husband and Morgan were dating during business travel and even during company-sponsored trips. They had neglected their work duties during work hours and misappropriated company funds for personal use. This was not just an affair. It was a serious violation in company rules. I also compiled all of these acts and reported them to my husband's supervisor. This was where my administrative skills from my previous job came in handy. Based on my time-stamped investigative report, an internal information investigation and interviews were conducted. As a result, my husband and Morgan were both fired. The two lost their jobs together in the worst possible way, and their WhatsApp was now a battleground of accusations and insults. It's all your fault. It's your fault I'm getting this punishment. And I wouldn't be in this mess if I hadn't been fooled by you. Their insults echoed each other, and they were a perfect match. My husband was completely dejected and no longer contacted me. However, I was surprised when the tenacious Morgan came to see me directly. Wow, Morgan's sudden attack. Is she coming to you after having an affair herself? That's not normal. Since I promised to pay compensation, I thought the punishment would be reduced. Being fired is so unfair. It's your fault.
I probably told them the truth about the two of you. If you have any complaints, why don't you tell the company to redo the investigation?
That's impossible. Don't be ridiculous. Your husband is nothing special, because he was annoying with his loving wife's lunches and barbecues. I just entertained him a little, and he came running eerily. I didn't mean for this to happen.
Morgan remained as detestable as she was the first time I met her at that awkward barbecue. My husband's temperament, which had changed so much from his pre-marriage personality, might have been poisoned by Morgan's toxic influence. But now my husband has also sided with her. I will protect myself and my daughter. I have made that decision, so I am not afraid, I told Morgan firmly. You lost your job and all your money for such an insignificant man. If you hadn't done such a foolish thing, you and my husband might have been more successful. It's a shame that both of you are so talented, but I was fortunate enough to realize my husband's foolishness early on. Thank you, Morgan. Goodbye. Please don't come here again. If you do come again, I will call the police. Morgan's frustrated face comes to mind. Sarah really gave it back well. She looked so frustrated, almost stomping her feet in anger. Since then, Morgan hasn't tried to get close to me again. With this settled between my husband and Morgan, I've enrolled my daughter in nursery and found a new job. My husband no longer treats me badly, and I don't have to take care of him, so I'm making good progress at work every day. I receive regular child support to raise my daughter, and I've been able to start a settled new life. Perhaps due to my confidence, I often get acknowledged at work. My self-esteem, which declined during my marriage, is now increasing rapidly. My husband's former boss has continued to support me even after the disciplinary action was decided. By the way, they also told me how they're doing now. Both my husband and Morgan have received disciplinary dismissals from the company, so it seems difficult for them to find re-employment in any other industry. My husband can only do day labor jobs and don't require a resume. Morgan is also living a life juggling multiple part-time jobs. Moreover, at these part-time jobs, Morgan is constantly causing trouble with her notorious pride and sharp tongue. Rumor has it that Morgan has quit and been hired again multiple times, making her quite the topic of conversation within the company. It's amazing how rumors spread. Rumors are also spreading that my husband was verbally abusive to me when I was pregnant. This has put him in a bad light, and he is being gossiped about everywhere. Neither my husband nor Morgan knows that their entire conversation with the tablet was recorded. I don't need to look at that tablet ever again. It was tough in many ways, but I've become much stronger from this experience, so I feel like I can face anything that comes my way. Sarah, who was able to handle the difficult times from pregnancy to childbirth calmly, was amazing. It's good that both her husband and his affair partner have been properly disciplined. You got the evidence, you got the just punishment, and you got them to make amends. Thank you for listening up to this point. From now on, I'll keep pushing forward positively with my daughter. Sarah has always supported her husband kindly since before they got married. However, influenced by a malicious female colleague, her husband turned to verbal abuse and infidelity towards Sarah. But actions like these always have consequences. With clear evidence and the backing of a principled boss, both her husband and Morgan faced strict sanctions. As a result, the futures these wrongdoers had envisioned were completely cut off. A foolish man who repays kindness with malice, and a malicious woman who covets what belongs to others. These kinds of villains might be closer to you than you think. Let's not carry burdens alone and instead seek help from those around us to ensure wrongdoers are held accountable.